found out my own family was planning to use me as a joke on Christmas Eve. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was just supposed to show up, smile for the cameras, and let them turn my life into a punchline. Instead, 2 nights before Christmas, I stood outside our dining room, hidden behind a half-closed door, and listened to my mother describe how they were going to humiliate me in front of our entire extended family, and the church recording it for their inspirational holiday video. Before I tell you what I did about it, tell me this in the comments. Where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? I never intended to eavesdrop. I'd come early to help with decorations like I always did, still stupidly hoping that if I showed up, helped out, and played along, maybe this Christmas would be different. I was on my way to the pantry when I heard my name followed by a burst of laughter. I froze. My mother's voice was giddy, excited, the way she sounded when she'd nailed the perfect party theme. Pastor Jim wants a lighthearted moment for the church video, she'd said. I thought we could do a little skit about Maya's career choices. My father chuckled in that deep, pleased way of his. We'll dress her up in a mechanic jumpsuit, he said. Maybe have her push a toy car on camera while we list all the opportunities she walked away from. It'll be a good lesson. A lesson. That's what he called it. My little sister Chloe jumped in next, practically bubbling. Oh my God, we could make a PowerPoint, she squealed. First slide, Ryan, Dr. Carter. Second slide, Chloe, influencer and dental hygienist. Third slide, Maya, queen of discount oil changes. She giggled like a kid pitching a skit to her drama club. I have so many pictures of her covered in grease. We can add memes. More laughter. Then my brother Ryan's voice, hesitating. I mean, isn't that a little... He didn't get to finish. My father cut him off. Oh, relax. It's harmless fun. And maybe she needs a wake-up call. She's almost 30 and still playing with that garage. My mother sighed with fake sadness. Exactly. It'll motivate her. She has responsibilities. Plus, the church will love it. I already felt sick. But then came the part that gutted me. My mom lowered her voice just enough to sound serious, but I could still hear every word. After the skit, we'll read the updated will. It's time she understands consequences. If she refuses to contribute to the family in a meaningful way, everything goes to Ryan. The house, the business, all of it. She'll get a small amount. Symbolic. Like I was a charity case. Ryan shifted again. In front of everyone? That feels intense. My dad exhaled sharply. She needs this, otherwise she'll keep thinking that little garage is enough and we can't let her drag us down. And then, as if I weren't their daughter but some abstract liability, my mom added, we have to protect the family assets. We're barely keeping up as it is. We had to refinance the store building again. If we cut her out now, someday it'll fall on you and Chloe. But you two are successful enough to handle it. My father agreed. She can't carry her weight. Better to cut her loose. Cut loose. Like I was some rusted bolt they could just toss. I stood there, pressed against the wall, my hand over my mouth, listening to my own parents and siblings plan a public humiliation and a financial execution packaged as a fun skit and moral teaching for the church. Their laughter didn't sound like laughter anymore. It sounded like something breaking inside my chest. Eventually, I slipped away, my legs shaking. In the kitchen, the box of Christmas gifts I'd brought sat neatly on the counter. Custom emergency car kits I'd assembled for each family member. Tire pressure gauges, jumper cables, reflective triangles, small first aid kits. Practical, thoughtful, made with love. They looked ridiculous now. I grabbed my bag, walked out the back door, and didn't say goodbye to anyone. The cold air hit my face so hard it felt like a slap, but it still hurt less than what I just heard. I got into my car, hands trembling so badly I could barely turn the key. By the time I reached the end of the street, I was crying so hard I could barely see the road. I don't remember most of the drive, just light smearing into streaks of red and green through my tears and the ache in my chest that felt like it was cracking my ribs. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of a 24/7 gas station and parked crooked at pump 7. And there, in the fluorescent silence, I broke. I collapsed against the steering wheel and sobbed. Ugly, heaving sobs that ripped through my chest. It wasn't just about the skit, or the toy car, or the stupid PowerPoint. It was about years of being the family flaw, the smudge on their perfect picture, the child who refused to fit the brand. Because that's what I was in the Carter family, a branding problem. When people hear, my family lives in Plano, Texas, they imagine precisely the image my parents have curated for decades. Big houses, manicured lawns, church on Sundays, kids who grow up to be doctors and marry other doctors. That's the fantasy my parents sell. The Carters as the model family, disciplined, successful, godly, polished. My dad, Thomas Carter, built a small chain of upscale furniture stores across North Texas. At every dinner party, he tells the same story, the humble beginnings, the grit, the sacrifices, the "no one helped me" narrative. He doesn't mention that his dad loaned him the money for his first store, or that my mother's parents co-signed on the early leases. Those details don't fit the brand. In our house, everything is a brand. His business, our family, even our emotions. Anything that doesn't photograph well is edited out. Facebook and church functions are just the main stages. My mother, Linda, is the director of that performance. She runs our family like a production set. She buys seasonal decor in bulk, coordinates colors for every holiday, organizes church charity galas like military campaigns, and knows exactly which relatives sit at which table for the best optics. I grew up watching her adjust centerpieces and lipstick before answering the door, even for neighbors dropping off cookies. Presentation matters, she'd remind me. People believe what they see. And people saw perfection. My older brother Ryan fit that image perfectly. Orthopedic surgeon, varsity sports, med school, pretty church girl wife. When he walks into a room, you can physically see my dad's posture change. Chest out, voice deeper, pride radiating like a spotlight. Then there's Chloe, my younger sister. She works part-time as a dental hygienist, but brands herself full-time as a lifestyle influencer. Brunch shots, outfit grids. Day in my life videos where doing basic errands somehow looks like a luxury commercial. My mom adores her. Brushes her hair, buys her outfits, photographs her constantly like she's crafting a porcelain doll. My baby girl, she coos, as if Chloe were an ornament that must always sparkle. Both of them fit the aesthetic. Clean, polished, respectable professions. Or at least professions that sound good in a church foyer. And then there's me. I'm Maya, 29, and I've been the glitch in the Carter algorithm since I was old enough to hold a wrench. I loved math and physics and anything with gears. I tore apart a lawnmower at 15 just so I could put it back together. Teachers pushed me toward Ivy League schools, prestigious programs, law and consulting careers. My parents did too. They bragged about my test scores before I took the tests. I was supposed to complete their trifecta of excellence: doctor, influencer, lawyer. So when I said I wanted to study automotive engineering at UT Austin and eventually own a repair shop, the silence at the dinner table was violent. My dad dropped his fork. My mom stared at me like I'd just announced I was joining a traveling circus. Ryan choked back a laugh. Chloe outright snorted. "Why would you throw away your potential like that?" my dad asked finally. "People like us don't do that kind of work." My mother was even more blunt. "We didn't sacrifice everything so you could smell like motor oil." That line stuck. She repeated it years later after I opened my own shop, like being useful in a non-photogenic way was the worst thing a daughter could choose. Ryan and Chloe turned my career into a running joke. At family dinners, they'd ask, "So, how's the grease pit?" Or, "Fix any tractors this week?" Always with that half-pitying, half-amused tone. To them, I wasn't a failure exactly. I was just the weird one, the downgrade, the character role in the family show. But the thing is, I loved my work. I loved helping single moms who couldn't afford dealership scams. I loved helping delivery drivers who needed their cars to make rent. I loved explaining repairs to terrified college kids who'd been lied to by 10 shops in a row. My customers weren't glamorous, but They were real. They were grateful. They made me feel needed. None of that counted at home. In the Carter universe, success had a dress code and a caption, degrees to frame, titles to flaunt, a salary big enough for my mother to brag about at galas and on Facebook. A daughter with a repair shop, grease on her jeans, and a gift for engines didn't fit that frame. I wasn't just different. I was the crack in their perfect mirror, the thing they wanted to fix, hide, or cut out. That's why what I heard behind that half-closed door 2 nights before Christmas didn't feel new. It felt like the final stamp on a judgment they'd held for years. The skit, the toy car, the PowerPoint, the will, it was all confirmation. In their eyes, my entire life was an embarrassment to manage. In that gas station parking lot, somewhere between rage and heartbreak, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called the one person who knew the real me, Lena. Lena and I met in college in a miserable thermodynamics class. I went into automotive engineering, she went into accounting, and later became a CPA. For years, she'd helped me with the business side of my life. The garage, the LLC I'd started for property investments, the boring financial stuff my parents liked to pretend I knew nothing about. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's wrong?" she asked, instantly alert, and I told her everything. The mechanic costume, the slides, the way they wanted to teach me a lesson in front of the church and extended family, the plan to read the updated will like it was a sermon illustration. There was a long silence on her end. Not a clueless silence, a calculating one. "Okay," she said finally. "First, I'm sorry, that's cruel, it's not normal, and it's not love." Her tone sharpened. "Second, remember this, you are not the weak one here. Your garage is profitable, you have no debt, your LLC is stable, you are not the problem." I sniffed. It didn't feel true. "Feelings aren't facts," she reminded me. "And speaking of facts, remember that commercial building you bought about 18 months ago? The older owner who just wanted to retire?" I frowned. "Yeah, south of Knox. I fixed the plumbing, the wiring." "Why?" Lena's voice turned precise. "That property is on Knox Avenue, right?" "Yes." "Maya," she said slowly. "Isn't that the same street where your dad moved his flagship furniture store last year? The one he said had an incredible deal on rent?" My brain stalled. Then everything clicked. The deed, the LLC paperwork, the lease Lena drafted, the remodel I'd overseen. "No," I whispered. "You own that building," she said gently, "through your LLC, and we've been handling the lease payments for a year." The world went silent. The humming pumps, the cold air, the ache in my chest, all of it muted. My parents, the ones calling me childish and irresponsible, were running their pride and joy store out of a building I owned. They had no idea. "Maya," Lena continued, "you've been undercharging them and they're behind on payments. You've been subsidizing them while they mock you." I pressed my hand over my mouth. All the years they called my work a hobby, all the jokes about my grease pit, all the lectures about responsibility, and my quiet, practical decisions had become part of the foundation holding up their empire. Something in me shifted, not revenge, not yet, more like alignment, the bones of my life finally clicking into their rightful place. "If they want to teach you about consequences," Lena said softly, "maybe it's time they experience some. Not payback. Boundaries." That word hung in the air. Boundaries. The one thing my family never allowed. That night, parked under flickering gas station lights, Lena and I opened my LLC folder and reviewed everything. The lease my parents signed without reading carefully. The missed payments. The clause that said if they were delinquent, I could raise their rent to market value or refuse to renew their lease with written notice before the end of the year. By 2 a.m., we had a plan. Lena jokingly called it your Christmas present to yourself. But really, it was just reality on paper. A lawyer she worked with agreed to send formal notices on my behalf. One, a letter stating that due to repeated late payments, the lease on the Knox Avenue building would not automatically renew. Two, an offer to renegotiate at full market value if they wanted to stay. Three, a demand for the overdue rent to be paid within 15 days. And 4, documentation clearly listing me, Maya Carter, as the sole beneficial owner of the property. No insults, no theatrics, just facts dressed in legal formatting. Before we finalized it, Lena paused. I need to ask, she said, are you doing this because you want to hurt them or because you're finally ready to stop letting them hurt you? The old me would have said both and meant revenge, but sitting there, drained and hollow, I realized something. I wasn't trying to ruin them. I just didn't want to be their unpaid support beam anymore. I'm done letting them treat me like a joke, I said quietly. That's all. Good, she replied. Then you're doing the right thing, and after this, I want you to go to therapy. Because this is big, and you deserve support that isn't just legal or financial. You deserve to heal. For once, I didn't argue. I booked an appointment before sunrise. The next morning, instead of packing for Plano, I packed for Colorado. I rented a small cabin near Breckenridge, wood siding, stone fireplace, nothing fancy, and then I started making calls. Not to my parents or siblings, to the people who would become my real community. The single moms whose cars I'd fixed late at night, the delivery drivers who brought me coffee before their shifts, friends from college, a nurse whose old Subaru I'd kept alive through 3 winters. I'm not spending Christmas alone, I told them. If you're free, come up. They did. No obligation, no drama, just a bunch of people showing up because they wanted to, not because a family name or a church role demanded it. That was my first glimpse of what chosen family looks like. Meanwhile, in Plano, Christmas Eve turned into a production worthy of my mother's Pinterest boards. The house glowed from every angle, white lights along the roofline, 3 identical reindeer arranged with military symmetry on the lawn. Inside, a massive tree shimmered for the benefit of the church camera crew setting up in the living room. My mother floated around in a red dress, air-kissing relatives, adjusting napkins, making tragic faces when people asked where I was. Oh, you know, Maya, she sighed. Always busy at that little garage. We're just praying she finds her way. Chloe live-streamed chunks of the evening, panning slowly over the dessert table, the decor, the twinkling lights. At one point, she lingered on my empty chair. Some people don't value nights like these, she said lightly to her followers. The comments poured in. You deserve better. You can't save everyone. Protect your peace. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so familiar. In Colorado, the cabin was chaotic and imperfect and profoundly peaceful. Kids ran around in mismatched socks. Someone burned the garlic bread, and the hot cocoa tasted slightly like instant coffee because we reused mugs too many times. Lena wore a ridiculous reindeer sweater. A driver I'd helped brought homemade tamales from his mom. 2 of the single moms I knew from the shop came with their kids, who built a crooked gingerbread house on the coffee table. No one cared that my hands smelled faintly of oil from fixing a flat tire that morning. If anything, one of the guys said, "Can you show me how to check my tires later?" I don't want to die on this mountain road. We laughed, cooked, and told stories. It felt like the opposite of performance. It felt real. Back in Plano, dessert was being served, and the pastor's team had just given the signal that the cameras were rolling again when the doorbell rang. My mother's face lit up, ready for another flattering delivery or donation. A young courier stepped in, shivering slightly. "Delivery for the Carter family," he said, handing over a stack of thick white envelopes stamped with a law firm's logo. My mother, always hungry for anything that might make her look important, opened the first one at the table. The smile slid right off her face as she read. Her fingers tightened. "Thomas," she whispered, pushing the letter toward my father. "Read this." He scanned it, his skin paling. It was all there. Notice of default, overdue rent totals, termination of the current lease effective January 30th, an invitation to renegotiate at market rate, and a reminder that the landlord had the legal right to pursue further remedies if they failed to comply. My mother tore open a second envelope. This one contained the supporting documents. LLC records, deed information, beneficial ownership statements, every page ending with the same name, Maya Carter. Grandma squinted. "Is that our Maya? Mechanic Maya?" Chloe's live stream cut off so fast her viewers probably thought the app crashed. Ryan went rigid. Some relatives looked horrified, others impressed. Pastor Jim glanced at his crew, unsure whether to keep filming or pretend the cameras were off. The perfect Carter Christmas cracked right there in the dining room, in front of the people whose opinions my parents had worshipped for years. The story they'd built for decades, that they were the successful, sacrificial parents whose wayward daughter refused to grow up, collided with the simple, written truth. Their failure child owned the building that housed their flagship store. And she wasn't willing to be their silent safety net anymore. Hundreds of miles away, my phone started buzzing on the cabin counter. Mom, Dad, Chloe, home, Ryan, Mom again. Lena raised an eyebrow. Want to pick up? She asked. I looked toward the living room where kids were decorating a lopsided tree and someone was laughing so hard they snorted. I picked up the pie server instead. They can wait, I said. We haven't cut the pie. For the first time in my life, I wasn't terrified of their calls. I was busy living my own life. Later that night, when the dishes were done and the kids had fallen asleep in a tangle of blankets, I stepped out onto the cabin porch alone. Snow drifted softly in the dark. The air was cold enough to sting my cheeks, but inside I felt strangely warm. My phone lit up with another incoming call. Mom, I answered this time. Her voice hit me like a slap. How dare you ambush us like this on Christmas? She shouted. In front of the pastor, your grandparents, the whole family. Do you have any idea what you've done? I leaned against the railing, watching snow gather on the railing. Her rage felt familiar but distant now, like listening to a storm through thick glass. Where are you? I asked calmly. The question threw her. Where are we? At home, of course, she snapped. Trying to salvage this disaster of an evening. Your father is devastated. People are asking questions. Pastor Jim is horrified. How could you do this? Did you like my gift? I asked quietly. Silence. Then she exploded. That was not a gift. That was betrayal. You humiliated us. You destroyed our reputation. You made us look like fools. I took a slow breath. The old version of me would have apologized. This one didn't. Mom, I said, you were planning to put me in a mechanic costume, shove a toy car into my hands, and read out all the ways I'd failed in front of the church cameras and our entire family. Then you were going to cut me out of the will on film? That's what you call love? It was a lesson, she insisted. You always overreact. You chose that life. We were trying to motivate you. By humiliating me? I asked. By turning me into a sermon illustration about wasted potential? She tried to pivot. You misunderstand everything. We have given you so much. We only want what's best for you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. What's best for me, I said, is not being your family punching bag, not being written out of the will as a show, not being mocked for the career that, by the way, is currently subsidizing your flagship store. She scoffed. You can't possibly... I bought that building 18 months ago. I cut in. I fixed it up. I set the rent below market so tenants, including you, could breathe. I watched you brag about that location like you discovered gold. I stayed quiet when you were late on payments because I thought, it's family. I can give them grace. While you were planning to humiliate me on Christmas, I was literally helping keep your doors open. She went silent. I could hear other voices murmuring behind her. Why didn't you tell us? She demanded finally. Why keep this a secret? I laughed once, softly. Because every time I talk about something I'm proud of, you find a way to turn it into a problem. You can brag about Ryan's clinic and Chloe's followers, but anything I build is treated like a phase or a joke. I knew if I told you, you'd either downplay it or try to control it. Her voice turned sharp again. If you go through with this, raising the rent, refusing to renew, people will find out. Your father's business could fail, and everyone will know it was you who did it. No, I said, if his business fails, it'll be because of his own decisions. I'm not asking for anything unfair. I'm charging the same rate anyone else would. I'm giving him the same notice any other landlord would. The difference is, I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not letting you use me as cheap rent and cheaper comedy. She tried one last tactic. You're overreacting. This conversation is not over, Maya. We are your family. I looked up at the sky where snow was falling quietly over the dark pines. For me, I said, it is over. I've sent the documents. You have 30 days to decide what you want to do as tenants. As my parents, I'm done letting you turn me into a lesson. I paused. Merry Christmas, Mom. Then I hung up. My hand shook a little, but not from fear, from release. The snow kept falling, soft and indifferent, and for the first time in my life, I felt light. The weeks after Christmas were messy. In Plano, the stories spread the way stories always do, in whispers, side comments, after church conversations. A handful of people said I was wrong to embarrass my parents on Christmas. But many others quietly asked the more important question. Why did they think publicly humiliating their grown daughter was good parenting? That question clung to them in the pews and at dinner parties in a way my ambush never could. Meanwhile, my dad sent me a long email full of financial charts and explanations about supply chains and seasonal dips, asking me to reconsider the new lease terms for the sake of family unity. I replied with 4 calm sentences directing all business communication to my attorney and reminding him that I'd already given them 18 months of discounted rent. I wished him the best. I didn't chase his approval. I didn't fold. That was new. Ryan called once. His voice was a mix of anger and guilt. Do you understand what you've put Dad through? He demanded. Do you understand what you all planned to do to me? I asked back. He fell quiet. When I told him I'd heard everything on the 23rd, he didn't deny it. He just said in a small voice, I didn't think it would go that far. I thought it was just some stupid church video. I believed him, not because I wanted to, but because that was always Ryan's role. Go along, don't question, keep the peace. He apologized. I accepted the apology without pretending it erased anything. Chloe never called. She posted cryptic quotes about betrayal and protecting your peace, and let her followers fill in the blanks. I blocked her stories. I'd spent enough of my life as background content. In my world, the opposite happened. Customers heard versions of the story and came into the shop with cookies, coffee, and kind words. Heard you stood up for yourself, one delivery driver told me. Took courage. The garage had its best month ever. Word spread. Maya's honest. Maya's tough. The Maya won't let anyone push her around. Lena and I started seriously exploring a second location. Not to prove anything to my family, but because the numbers said yes. I kept going to therapy and slowly learned that you can grieve the family you wish you had while still refusing to be abused by the one you do have. A year slipped by. My parents moved their flagship store into a cheaper, smaller strip mall space. They still sent occasional neutral emails, but the tone had changed. Less superiority, more caution. Ryan opened his own clinic and texted me the day he signed the lease. Doing this on my own. Thought you'd want to know? Chloe stayed in her curated world, occasionally posting captions that hinted at self-reflection, but we stayed distant. I opened a second garage, bought a little house, and kept building the life they never imagined for me. When the next Christmas rolled around, I didn't even think about going to Plano. I went back to the cabin in Colorado instead, but this time with more people, more laughters, more history. We cooked. We fixed a broken snowblower in the driveway together. We kept our now official tradition, going around the room and sharing one moment from the year when we chose ourselves instead of someone else's expectations. When it was my turn, I said, last Christmas I stopped begging my own family for a seat at their table and built my own instead. No one looked uncomfortable. No one told me I was too sensitive. They just nodded, understanding. Later that night, I stepped onto the same porch under the same kind of silent snowfall and checked my phone. There was a new email from my dad. It was short this time. Business is stable. We signed a fair lease on a new space. Ryan mentioned your free winter safety checks. That's good work. Good work, not a confession, not an apology, but not an insult either, a crack in the armor. I didn't build a whole fantasy around it. I just smiled and replied, I'm glad things are stable. I hope someday we can talk without turning each other into lessons. No pressure, no expectations, just truth. As I slipped my phone back into my pocket, I realized something I never understood growing up in that perfectly staged Plano house. Losing your role in your family's performance doesn't mean your story ends. Sometimes it means you finally get to write it yourself. Last Christmas, I thought being cut out of the will, of the narrative, of the picture would destroy me. Instead, it made room for something better. A life I chose. People who saw me as human, not as a prop, and a version of myself that no longer needed my parents' approval to breathe. If your own family has ever made you the joke, the cautionary tale, the one they teach lessons to in front of others, hear me clearly. You were never born to be their punchline. You are not a prop in their performance. You get to choose where you sit, who you eat with, who you trust. Sometimes the kindest gift you can give yourself is to stop showing up to tables where you're only there to be laughed at. And if you're listening to this right now, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it? Because somewhere out there, maybe right now, someone else is quietly choosing themselves for the first time too.